This is I Have No Title and I Must Podcast, the show where we discuss any and all aspects of pop culture that is on our mind. We are your hosts, Tyler
And Chris.
and the Christmas season is finally upon us. And I think I speak for both of us when I say that too many years in retail has kind of killed our Christmas spirit just a little bit.
Especially the specific retail we were involved with.
Yes.
And one of us still is.
But there is a Christmas tradition that used to be really popular, but it's kind of fallen to the wayside, at least here in America. I'm not sure how prevalent it is still in Europe, but it used to be real common to tell ghost stories at Christmas time. And no one's really sure when or why it started, because it's mostly an oral tradition for the longest time. But it's believed that during the winter solstice, that was like a time of death and things are dying back before the renewal during spring. That, and when it gets dark and cold earlier, more people are indoors, less outdoor chores to do, so you pass your time by telling ghost stories. Then with the change of the Industrial Revolution and printed books were more common, we started getting it more in the written form, with obvious the most famous being Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I think he actually wrote several other ghost Christmas stories that just weren't as popular. And even in Germany, we got stuff like the Krampus in combination with our other Santa tellings. So I think that's what I want to do for our Christmas spirit is let's tell ghost stories. So what is your kind of thinking on ghost stories, Chris?
Real or fake? And by fake, I mean, of course, fiction, not trying to fool anyone with something real. What do you prefer? A real ghost story or a really great fiction one?
Well, sometimes I think the real ghost stories are fiction, but I don't believe that everyone is making it up.
Yeah, but they didn't all see what they saw, what they thought they saw.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But I do believe there is something like more than what we perceive on a paranormal level.
I like to think that too.
I don't think I'm at a point to say what I think that is, because to be honest, I don't know. I don't think any of us do. But to say that there isn't something, I think is very narrow-minded.
This is where we come closest on complete agreement on any one topic. I like to remain open-minded on everything, and that includes this. Are we beings with a soul that when we die, we go somewhere else, and possibly it's the Judeo-Christian version of God that exists and decides who's good and bad? It's possible. Are we nothing? Is this a fluke of nature? And there's one in the universe where there's the spark of sentience and we're alive, but when we die, there's nothing, no soul, we're just dust. That's possible too. Yeah. I couldn't say. I've not been given definitive proof on either. And I remain open-minded to see which is which, and I hope I find something during my lifetime. Having said all that, I have seen some weird things.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on it. I've seen some things, maybe has an explanation, but the ones that I have don't fully fit. But again, what is it? I don't know. Even my own theories I have about it, I don't know that I believe them, but still like to explore the concept.
So I don't like to say... This would sound weird. I know a lot of people would say this exact phrase. When I was a kid, I lived in a haunted house. I don't necessarily think I did. That wasn't necessarily the case. I was born in the city that we're talking in right now. You weren't born here. You were born somewhere. You grew up somewhere else. I didn't grow up here, though. I only returned here in my teens. I grew up in Texas, and ghosts are kind of a big deal in Texas. There's a lot of bloodshed there. I mean, here through what is essentially considered all of the South, is where the Civil War was waged. But more so in Texas, there were other wars, and the land goes back, to other cultures. Mexican culture, some of the Mexico line would shift further south, and as more and more wars were fought and America gained more territory. And the Mexican culture and other further back culture, the Maya, the Incas, the Aztecs, they have a lot of macabre rituals. I think that's what lends itself. And, that death and family that has gone before you is really important. in the Mexican culture, as they have an extra holiday that we don't, that we've mentioned before, the Dia de los Muertos, that honors the dead specifically. And it's really fun, but to any other culture looking at it, it seems extremely macabre and dark, which I love. Those are just my theories, my personal theories on why, even as Americans in Texas, it pervades. It seeps through the consciousness. Every year there were specials on TV around Halloween that would be, like Texas ghost stories, which I mean, of course, you're not going to see Texas ghost stories on local television in Kentucky or wherever we may be, but we don't have our version of that. I haven't seen our version of that anywhere else or at any other time. There's, generic stuff, but even then, less of it. And there it was a big deal, and possibly still is, I hope, an even bigger deal today. So I grew up with that, and I like to think that it didn't influence me. I was a weird kid. I was into that sort of thing and already was. So I never liked sleeping in my room. When we moved into this place, I was about 6, and it's the place that I lived the longest until the place I lived at that I just moved from. So it's where even oftentimes now, my dreams revert to there. I still dream about this place. It was where most of my formative years were, from first grade till the 8th grade. If you imagine that span, that's, all of my elementary school years through or like 90% of my middle school years, and then going into high school here. I never slept in my bedroom. I did occasionally. My parents, my mom especially, wanted me to sleep in my bedroom. Where did I slept in the living room on the couch. It's weird, right? I don't tell people that. I don't just bring this up randomly. And I would only bring this up now in the context of this topic. So why did I do that? I never felt comfortable being in that room on that end of the house by myself for an extended period of time. And really not once it got dark. I remember one time especially, my mom had gotten me to go to bed in my bedroom. And I had zero intention of staying in there. This was all a ruse on my part. I stayed in there for a little bit, waited for her to go back, and then waited to hear her go further on from the kitchen to her bedroom. I thought that I did. I really thought that I did. And then I gathered up my pillow and my blanket and sneaked into the kitchen and almost past the little, where the wall comes out from the kitchen. And there was this other kind of a bar area where there's like that half wall, and then she jumped out and scared me for fun because she knew what I was going to do, which got my dad up out of bed with me screaming and crying after that, and was like, why would you do that? Now he's not going to be sleeping anywhere. He's going to be awake all night, which was true. What was in that room, I do not know, but even in the day, and with friends, what few ever came over, I never felt comfortable in that room. And I only felt more so comfortable during the day or with people. Was that just me psychologically? I do not know. I also want to preface by saying, for the rest of this, I have never seen a ghost. I wish I had. I've looked for them, wanted to see them, but I haven't. Does that make me think that doesn't exist? Not necessarily. I still want to experience something. One year around Christmas, it was probably getting close to around, I think it was closer to Christmas than it is now. We're recording a little before the 1st of December, so it would have been into December. Our tree was up and presents were under the tree. And I had a tradition that before, anytime I came in from out, I'll go straight to the tree and shake some gifts. And one night we were going to be going to get something to eat or to the store or something. I can't remember. I was just with my mom. It was me and my mom. My dad was at work, and I was playing a video game. I never did this, but I got really far in Metroid, original NES Metroid. I paused it, and I turned the TV off without telling my mom, and looked at a few gifts. We left. We were only gone an hour, maybe 2. Came back. The tree is directly in front of the front door. It's like you open it up, and it's just, my view is like my view of you, but a little further back. I look, and the presents were in a different orientation than what I'd left, which was odd to me because I had just shaken a few just before we left. I had a few minutes. She was like, we're getting ready to go. And I was like, okay, I go. I turn as I'm standing by the door. I remember looking at a few. I look at them, shake maybe a few, we leave. We come back. I was going to do that, and I was like, that's weird. Now, the easy and obvious explanation is I just forgot. But as soon as my mom was distracted with putting some groceries down or putting some bags away or whatever, I go and turn the TV on, and the game was in a place in the game that I'd never been and was still paused. And that was odd. Now, here's the thing with that. It's a cartridge game. There's no, nobody could have I don't know how the modern games work. I just know a lot of them you have to be connected to the internet to play a video game. A lot of them, right? I mean, you can play offline on some of these, but it doesn't work the same. Some of them you aren't specifically downloaded. I think it would be possible for something to slip, unpause, and for things to happen and for the game to look different from if you walked away from it. I don't think necessarily the case with this. Another easy and obvious explanation is I forgot. Someone else said, maybe your dad came home. If he came home and moved the presents around, that's one thing. I don't think he would have been playing Metroid. Is this true? Is it not? Who knows? I'm telling you, this is my honest experience. This is what happened to me. The real explanation, I have no idea because I never saw anything. I just had a bad feeling. My parents also were separated and later divorced. This was the last place they lived together. Tension rose exponentially throughout the years. Arguments got worse. Sometimes that's just people. People can have, a place doesn't have to be haunted for that to occur. And I had a cat. The weirdest and the most profound thing that happened was with my cat Summer. This cat when I would come home, sometimes I'd lay on the couch, watch some TV. He would sleep on my chest, but he didn't like being in that room either, my bedroom. Sometimes, I remember one specific time I tested it. I went down the hall, carried him, and I got to the threshold of the door. This was in the middle of the day too, by the way, which I didn't want to be in there by myself. And I just held him inside the room and dropped him right on the inside, close to the ground. And then as his feet hit the floor, he got real close to the ground and just bolted between my legs back down the hallway and in somewhere else in the house. And then I said, if you're not staying, I'm not staying. From nothing. Nothing had happened. It's just that room. I didn't feel that way about anywhere else in the house. I could be by myself anywhere else, and it was fine. And I'm sure there is somebody with even a basic psychology degree that has another easy explanation as to why specifically that. I'm sure you're married to one.
Yeah.
But she doesn't listen to the show, so I am safe from scrutiny. Then one night, a few years later, my mom she had gone back to college, and she is taking all these math classes, and she would always have her math books on the kitchen table and would be doing math homework like Saturday night. And my dad was in the living room watching TV. My cat Summer was under the table with her, sleeping or just lounging. And for lack of a better term, he went crazy. He started attacking her. He was like biting and then started scratching at her feet. And she jumped up and was, assumed there was a logical explanation. But then he started acting aggressive toward all of us in a way that I'd never seen. He wasn't like that. The whole thing's kind of a blur in my mind. I don't remember specific details because he wasn't a huge cat. It wasn't like Cujo, I mean, it's a cat. It wasn't like a Maine Coon or a Bobcat or something. It's just a regular tabby, but still, it's like, that's my cat. And something happened to him, and I'll never know exactly what. We just had to open the door, and he ran outside. That wasn't the last time I saw him. He just became an indoor-outdoor cat. In the afternoons when I would get off school, I would come home and he'd be waiting for me. He'd walk up the little pathway, the little concrete pathway, meet me, and then we'd walk inside together. And he would stay in, and most of the afternoon up until at some point in the evening, he would scratch at the door and he'd go out. And I mean, he'd been inside for years. I'd had him since he was a kitten. That's the only life he knew, was being inside. He wasn't a feral cat. He was somebody's, a friend of my mom or dad's, I don't remember who, somebody they worked with, I think, and their cat had kittens, and we got one of them. So, yeah, I don't know what caused that to happen. I've always felt like, and I've never lived in another place that had, like, as Sam Jackson would put it about 1408, an evil room. I don't know. And I don't even know that I think that about this room. Nothing particularly bad or weird happened in that room. Weird things happened in other rooms. I just didn't want to be in that room. And I like that my ghost story specifically happened to be around Christmas. I know there were other things that I would misplace or would seemingly get misplaced, and strange occurrences, in my tenure there through when I was a kid. Some of it could be easily explained, some of it not. Those ones are the ones that stand out to me the most, that I was like, in my mind, I know that the outs that other people account for were not the case. This is what happened. This is how it happened, and I don't have a good explanation for it.
I don't know that I do either. I mean, I could throw some out there, but are they true? Don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, and who am I to say those things didn't happen and that it was some normal thing that I just am unaware of? I'm open-minded to that, but I'm also saying I've run those through my head, and a lot of other things, weird things that happen, I square it up and push it away because it is too easily explained, even though sometimes dishes settle in the sink. That happens. After hours of them being stacked, they're slowly slipping, and then all of a sudden, when you're watching something and you're dozing off late at night, they slip and all the dishes just kind of crash together, and you're like, what the was that? Yeah, it happens, and it kind of happens all the time.
That's where I'm at. I usually discredit most sounds, but I have seen a couple ghosts. Actually, the first time I ever experienced one was a full body apparition. I can't remember my exact age. Older than 5, probably less than 10 though. We'd all went to one of my aunts for something, I don't remember. But about dark, all of my cousins and I were outside playing, doing whatever. And up on this little embankment next to their house, I see a man walking that's wearing like old mining uniforms and stuff, except completely white, you could see through. I'm like, guys, I think I just seen a ghost. They're like, no, you didn't. I'm like, I did. He was up there. He looked like this. They're like, no, he didn't. It's like, you're either trying to scare us, which is not working, or you're seeing things. And so, of course, when I turned around, not there anymore. Turned around again, they had a chair in their yard. The guy was sitting in it. I'm like, there he is again. They're like, stop, just stop. It's not working. Then he was gone. So I'm like, I don't know, maybe I was.
Now, could they have looked, or did they choose not to? Could they have had the same view as you?
Oh, they could have easily had the same view as me, but I just don't think they did, or if they did, he wasn't there anymore. So that's why they're like, you're either making it up or not. But I mean, front yard open, you could easily see where I was looking, easily see the chair, but none of them believed me. So maybe I was seeing things, I'm a little kid, it's dark, whatever. But a few years later, when the ghost hunting stuff started getting popular on Discovery, I got curious. I'm like, I wonder what people are saying about different locations around me, like what kind of weird haunted things we have around here. So I was going and doing some research, and sure enough, around that area of my aunt and uncle's house, there have been reports of people seeing an old miner walking those roads. Because apparently because this is like a big mining area, still is today, like prominent main employment for a lot of people is something with the coal mines. But supposedly in the 1930s, there was an explosion at the mine that killed this man, but you can still see him walking home from work. That's a little bit of validation, because I didn't know this story going in. Everything in this matches up with what I saw.
I wish I had seen it too.
Yeah.
Can we go there?
I mean, probably. I don't know if they live in the same house, and I don't remember the exact area, but...
So the ghost may have moved?
I don't think the ghost moved, but
okay.
I don't know if I could...
If the ghost still lives there, then we can go see him.
But I've had several other weird things with places I wouldn't think would have been haunted. But this is just mainly just me seeing these. But when I still lived with my parents, I was getting up early one morning and I was coming out of my room down the hallway. And the way it is from my room to the end of the hallway, if you get to the end, hook left, that's the kitchen. It sticks out a little bit farther and goes into the front area, like the foyer there. And then that hooks into the living room, or you go out the front door. But as I'm walking, I see her dog sitting at the end of the hallway, and it kind of perks up when it sees me and is kind of moving around and stuff. And I thought that maybe the dog needed to go out, so I was talking to the dog, asking if it needed to go outside or if it wanted food or something, and it was doing that little dance. But out of the corner of my eye, I see movement, so I look down, and the dog is asleep in its bed and didn't wake up until I started talking. Then when I looked back, the dog that I had seen at the end of the hallway wasn't there anymore. And a similar instance, but with a cat, unfortunately got too close to one of our outside dogs and they had killed it. And my mom, she's like, hey, do you care to bury this cat before your brother sees it? Because he's really attached to all of our cats. And like the dirt and stuff on their property is like mostly like clay soil. And so it's hard to dig through. And she couldn't do it. It's going to be a while before Dad got home. So I went out, edge of the property line, buried the cat. And as I'm walking back to the house, the cat that I just buried ran across my path and then into some weeds and then was gone.
People will want me to ask, how many cats did you have? Or how many cats at the time?
We had a few, but
Now, were they siblings?
they were siblings, but they're all like strays and stuff, so they all look different.
Okay, that was obviously going to be the question.
Yeah, none of the two of them looked close enough.
Okay, I just wanted, you didn't offer that. I wanted to make sure that was on record.
Yeah, on record, we had several cats. And I don't know if Mom remembers this, but she was with me walking back, and she even asked, was that the same cat? And I'm like, it looked like it. And I'm pretty sure where I used to work is haunted. Like, we even joked, called the ghost Victor. I don't think there's any Victor there. We had one instance. This could have easily been a prank. I will preface that. But if this was a prank, no one fessed up to it, and they pulled it off expertly, because I can't think of an easy way for them to do it. I seen the security footage that they showed me from our back office, and the light in the office is motion sensed, so you have to move in order to turn it on. And the way the camera's set up, you can see the office door and then the cash office door, both closed. The light turns on, nothing else in the room. Then the chair pulls out from the desk, swivels, and then pulls itself across the room to the other desk, and there's still nothing in the room.
Was this the most recent place you worked at?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. And I'm like I said, could have easily been a prank. Maybe not easily, but could have been a prank. But if someone did prank it, kudos, hats off to you. Because like I said, motion sensitive light. The light came on before the movement in the room.
So who discovered this video? One of the managers? Or?
Yeah, I would assume. I don't know if it was the store manager that found it or one of the other managers.
Initially, at least. And then they were like, guys, you got to see this. And they were just showing everybody for fun.
Yeah.
So everybody got a good look at this. And even after a long period of time, no one was like, gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, at
Plus,
least to me.
It was in the office, so it would have had to have been somebody who had access. It would have been a very limited few people. And this also brings, if people want to get psychological about this, people who have access to offices enjoy a certain level of power and adulation. And when those people pull off pranks or have a good joke, they want credit. Let me tell you, the person who had access, who could have done that, wouldn't have let it go.
No.
They would have eventually said, gotcha.
Because the group of people that I worked with at the time, if they pulled a prank, if you weren't the one they were pranking, they definitely would have told you. Because they'd be like, you gotta come listen to what I just did.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I work with not the same group of people, but the same group of people.
If they did something, they would have told somebody.
Oh, for sure.
But as far as I know, no one ever fessed up to it. And I had one other instance or at that same workplace that I'm not sure about. It might have been around Christmas time for this one too, actually, because it was one of the days that I had to come in like extra early. Like, I think it's like 4 or 5 in the morning. And it was, at the time, it was just me and my manager, and one other person was supposed to have come in at this time. It was just going to be the 3 of us. I'm in the back working, and I hear 2 distinct female voices talking about something. What it was, I couldn't exactly make out, but it gradually got louder and louder until it sounded like it was just outside the back room door. And so I assumed that my manager and the other coworker were coming to the back, but then it stops outside the door, then goes the other direction. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm continue doing what I'm doing back here, and they're doing something else. But later, the manager comes in and tells me that she needs me to go let in the other coworker. I'm like, isn't she already here? She's like, no, she wasn't supposed to come in till like an hour after us. So there's no one else here besides the 2 of us, and I hear them talking outside the door. So I still have no idea what that was.
Any idea? Can you think of any other explanation that somebody's going to try and debunk with? Because I can't. At that time, the place where I work, our ghost's name is George. The guy who works for the local sheriff's department, who used to work with us, gave him that name. I think, now, our building is much older than your building where you worked at. I don't think there were any deaths. There was at the Richmond Mall I think there's been like documented deaths on the premises. I think a really old employee we had years before I worked there did have a heart attack in the back, but I don't think he died. And since I've worked there only a few years ago, we had an employee have a serious accident that she did die from, but not on the premises. It was a few days afterward. So, any ideas?
Only
I'm just
thing-
forcing you to be as fair as possible for the people so that they will shut the up. Sorry, edit that out.
Well,
So they'll be nicer to us.
I was gonna say, as far as the voices, I don't know, because like I said, it was Christmas time. If it was the radio, it does nothing but blast Christmas music, sing 5 songs over and over, and one of the main reasons for the death of my Christmas spirit. There's only so many times you can hear "Walking in a Winter Wonderland" before you lose your mind. But anyway, like I said, as far as the video, could have been a prank. I mean, you'd have to really plan this one out, though. As far as the voices, I don't know. No one fessed up to that one either. And it kind of weirded the other two out when I told them about it. So, gauging by their reaction, they're not pulling something on me either.
Well, I have another one, and this took place years later, many moves later, and I'm trying to find a couple of photos because I did take photos. My dad was a prankster, but he never really pranked me with any kind of ghost thing. This is what I firmly believe. I did not see him. I did not hear him. But the day he died, came home. I spent most of the day out. I just left. I didn't have anything to do really much beyond sorting through a few things that I had to deal with. But once that was done, it was just me in my head. So I went out and just spent the day out and went to a few stores. When I came home, he had a chair right outside. He spent a lot of his time outside. And I sat in that chair for a bit. I had a lot to think about. And when I went to go put my key in the door, it was like I was talking to him too, just musing to myself really, as if he could hear me. Whether he could or couldn't, I do not know and won't know. But I go up to the door, put my key in, turn the knob, open the door, and the door opens about 2 or 3 inches. And it's like, if you've ever opened a door, it's somebody like put their foot on the other side to keep you from opening. It began to open, and then it was like I was pushing on somebody's full weight. And I mean, like, there was a wall there. There was no give. There was no, like, somebody, like, back and forth with me or whatever. It just didn't open. And I was pushing. And I was like, what could this be hung on? If you open the door all the way, it did begin to get caught. I mean, a wide arc. You would never get it that wide unless you were pushing something out the door, which I did occasionally. You bring some furniture in or out, and that's how I know this. If you go all the way, it would get hung on the carpet at some point, but not at this point. You know, like 2 or 3 degrees, and I'm pushing. I can't get the door open, and I don't know why. And then at some point, I don't know what made me say this, but I audibly said, and because I was starting to get angry, I was like, what is this? And on such an odd day, one of those days that you remember the whole day because of what happened. You know, it's like the day your dad died. You're not going to forget most of that day, unless it's an extremely traumatic event, which it is for a lot of people, but you're going to remember a good chunk of that. And I remember most of the day. And I said, Dad, this isn't funny. And then I just fell in. The door just became unstuck. I fell in. I swear to God. This is what happened. And I looked behind the door. I was like, what was this? What could this have been? Because I immediately went into, like, I need to be able to tell this story, and I need to know what that was, my analytical mind. But, like, on an emotional level, that was a roller coaster in itself, just those few minutes, because I'm still reeling. It's not even probably a little over 12 hours since my dad had died there on the premises. And then this happens too. And I'd had to deal with police and coroner and all this other stuff. It was such a crazy day. Yeah. Then a few days later, I had this sculpture that I'd been working on. Not this day, but and I can show you this photo. So what you see there, in the background there, you see the couch covered in a red cloth. And then there's like, I think it's an 8-sided small table there. And then you can see like a black sheet on that. This is the arm of a torso of a sculpture. This is the head. It's covered in black. I'd put it over so not get dust on it. That was sitting on that. And this smaller one with the keyboard, that was on top of it. This is extremely light. These were hollow arms. And that was on top of it. My first day back to work, I took a couple days off to sort some things out. This was on top, pushed up against the wall. I hadn't actually been into this room. I didn't eat, so I didn't come into the kitchen. I barely came from outside my room to the bathroom, back to my room, taking a shower or whatever. When I left to go to work that morning, and you can see it was 7:26 a.m., June 10th, 2015. It's still dated. That's the original photo that I took. This was all on the floor. Whereas it had been, I left it well over on the table, pushed up against the wall. And before I left, I did several experiments. I put everything back the way it was and tried to, anything that could fall off, that could drag it, I tried to rake as much as I could other things to see if I could pull it off. And I couldn't recreate it. I just cannot fathom how this thing, a sculpture of a human torso, laying flat on a wide circular table, could, it's not 8-sided, it is 6-sided, could have just drifted off or fallen off because everything was mostly flat, laying on a flat surface. So then when I get to work, this is probably unrelated. There's June 10th, just 20 minutes later, there was a table display of letters that as I was walking from the front door to go back and clock in the back had collapsed and was just all out in the floor. I don't think those two were connected, but it was weird how they happened within 20 minutes of each other, and it was on my mind to think, like, what is this? I was also, for a short time, on a ghost hunting team, which I never saw anything. I didn't go on a lot of the trips. I just mostly went to the social functions. It more so was just kind of a club for people that had like-minded interests, but they did organize trips where some if not all the members would get to, whoever could come, we'd all get together and we'd go to certain places and investigate if we could get permission, or if it would be like a public-ish kind of place, and document what we could, see what we could see. We had a policeman was on the team for the local university. He had been on that police force for a long period of time, so it's interesting to have him because he had a very analytical mind. Amateur photographer too, so he had a lot of knowledge about old school photography and bridging over into digital photography. And it was a couple that had started the team, and I never once saw anything, and that sucked. But another interesting thing is Grant from Ghost Hunters, the sci-fi, everybody knows Ghost Hunters, like the most famous, and some would say they have their faults, but one of the more legit things, because they debunk 80 to 90% of everything they come across, because they say very openly, we want to debunk everything we possibly can. So if there is anything real out there, that's what we leave to, let the skeptics sort out and say, if there's something real, we want to know. We don't just want to say everything's a ghost. And Grant actually has lived in the area here. We've both met him or had experiences with him. Super nice, cool guy. He usually would come through around Christmas. I haven't seen him in several years, though. I don't think he still lives here, but he did for a while, and I think his family was into arts and crafts, which would lead him to both of the stores we worked at separately. So, yeah, I know dozens of ghost stories from other people that have told us. The only other one time was me and a couple, it was a brother and sister. We went to this place that no longer exists, and it was called Little Egypt. And there was an old legend from around here. We would all tell each other, like, you have to go and in your car, turn the car off and say something at this landmark. It was kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and since then, I think the road's been torn up, and they completely built up the whole area with like a subdivision or something. And so you would say this stuff, and then something was supposed to happen, and you leave, and everybody had a story about, like, oh, it really happened to me, and you were like, yeah. Well, no, it didn't, but okay. So we went, we did the thing, nothing happened. We left, and we went to Fazoli's. Becky, who was actually our guest host here during the month of October for our spooktacular spook podcast season. If you haven't listened to that, go check those out. Those are actually some of our best work. She stayed in the car, writing down some things, and it was right at dusk, I remember, because we went right before the sun set, because it was still daylight when we were out there, because I have photos of it. And by the time time we were at the restaurant, it was dark. It just turned dark, So me and Erin are in line, and then she comes in and she looks kind of weird and was like, guys, I was sitting in the car, obviously, and like the dome light came on, like the interior light. And as I was writing some things down, and we were like, that was weird. And she was like, so I looked to see if you'd left the keys in, and you hadn't. I didn't touch anything. It just popped on. And she left. And I was like, why didn't you stay and like talk to the ghost? I thought that's what we came for. So anyway, I did not personally experience that, but I think the light was still on when we went outside. Because we're like, yeah, the battery's going to run down. Anyway, that's all. Those are like the best ones that I have. The things that I have zero explanation for. And there's plenty of other times you hear something and you're like, was it?
Yeah. I've got plenty of stories like that. I'm not going to mention them now. Because, like I said, it could easily be written off. So I've stayed at this hotel before. Well documented that it's supposedly haunted, like it used to be an old schoolhouse. But I've heard the voices and stuff you're supposed to hear. But there was a bunch of us dumbass kids staying there, and it's supposed to be a kid you hear. So it could have easily been one of us dumbass kids. So who knows? But I do have one more that I want to mention, because this is the one that actually freaked me out, and I think Sarah's the only one I've told about this.
Oh.
Because this is recent, like around this time last year.
Okay.
Again, I was staying at my parents'. It was either Thanksgiving or Christmas. I think it was Christmas. But I was in my old bedroom. I was just drifting off to sleep. I was listening to a podcast, and I felt something tap my hand. So I start to wake up, and I feel it tap my hand again, like 3 quick taps. So I roll over and look to the side, and I see this entity standing there. At least my height, maybe a little taller. Looked like he's wearing a dark cloak and this gas mask. You've seen the Doctor Who episode, the Are You My Mommy?
Yep.
Yeah, looked like that. And it had its hands kind of tucked one over top of the other close to its chest, but its fingers were 3 times the length they should be. Ugh. And my first thought was, what the Then my next thought was, no, I'm not seeing this. Like, there's just enough light in the room. It's casting shadows. It's something in the room. I'm going to grab my phone. I'm turning the light on, and I'm going to laugh at how silly I'm being. So I keep my eyes locked on this thing. I reach over, I grab my phone, turn on the light. Whole time, eyes locked on it. As soon as I shine the light where it's at, gone. And there's nothing there. I don't mean like, of course there's nothing there. You just said that your mind was playing tricks on you. I mean, no, there was everything that I thought would have been there casting the shadow was not there. And even after I turned the phone light back off and it got dark again, there were no shadows that would have made that in that area again.
So once your eyes had time to adjust back to the darkness and you were trying to figure out what it was, everything looked the way the room should have looked.
Yes.
And there was no thing there.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget, there's a chair in the middle of the room that I left my jacket.
Well, yeah, that was my first thought.
Yeah.
Because there's a chair right next to the bed. I'm like, I've got clothes on it. I'm seeing that pile of clothes. My mind is filling in the blanks. That's what it is.
All right, the chair monster.
But the chair was farther to the right.
Mm-hmm.
This thing was standing more in the middle of the room. There was nothing else in the middle of the room. And even, like I said, after I turned the light back off, the shadows weren't there anymore. So I'm like, I don't know what the just happened. Because even the first touch of my hand, I didn't think there was someone in the room. I thought there's a bug in here or something. Then I felt it again, and that's what woke me up.
Oh, it touched you?
Yes.
Oh.
Because I felt something on my hand, and that's what initially woke me up. Then as I was waking up, I feel 3 more taps on my hand. Then that's why I rolled over to see what's going on. Because this is not a bug. It's someone coming in my room trying to wake me up. And
well, yeah, your sleep paralysis demon.
Well, see, that was my first thought. It's like maybe sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
But
you weren't paralyzed because you immediately got your phone.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, the whole point of sleep paralysis is
You're
the
there
paralysis.
For a bit. Yeah.
I'm like, I wouldn't even be able to see this thing except that I rolled over. And I moved my hand because, again, I thought it was a bug initially. So I was trying to see what was crawling on me.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't sleep paralysis usually start during that REM cycle of sleep?
Yeah.
I hadn't been asleep long enough for that to take place. And I know this because I fell asleep with that podcast playing. And it was still maybe 10 minutes past where I was. Yeah. Maybe 15.
So you'd only just dozed off.
Yeah.
And enough to pop back awake.
So not, like I said, 10, 15 minutes max. Podcast was still playing. And if this was sleep paralysis, this would have been the first and only time it's happened to me. I've not had any other experiences like this before or since.
Did you ever see that Next Generation episode where the 4 crew members were being taken, like, in their sleep? They weren't sleeping. It was like an alien abduction episode. And they go to the holodeck to, like, describe. It was like a Next Generation version of an alien abduction episode, because they're in there and they're like having group therapy trying to piece together what had happened to them, and they're, you know, being analyzed on a table, just like how people talk about being abducted and put on a table. And they're trying to reconstruct the type of table in the holodeck and the tools that were being worked on them. I think Worf was one of them, and maybe even Riker. Then they figure out a way to, like, maintain consciousness and see what's happening, and it's like these, spoiler alert for a 30-year-old show, but it's like coming from another dimension or something, and they never fully figure it out. They just stop it from happening. The alien you describe, or alien entity, whatever it was, very similar to this alien. I think from my vague recollection, it's probably been years since I've even seen a rerun of this or a clip from it, but like long tendrily fingers, and from what I remember, a hood. Like, you don't really see their face. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe they even had a mask. So maybe not a ghost, maybe something worse.
Like I said, it just creeped me out because, one, you don't expect to roll over and see that.
No one does.
Especially if you've not had these experiences before.
I mean, I'll be expecting it the next time I go to your parents' house.
Yeah, I have been. I've been like, because like I said, been back since, not happened since, not happened before, but that one night. And to also debunk whether or not it was someone playing a trick on me. One, as far as I know, my parents don't have any of that stuff. Two, I'm a very light sleeper. If I would have woke up long before anyone got in the room, because they would have had to open the door, let in anything light from the hallway, walk in, and then stand there. And to get me up to go to school, only thing my mom would do, she wouldn't even say anything to me, just open my door. I'd wake up. And even now, I'm really light sleeper. Doesn't take much at all to wake me up. That, and when I turned my light on, they would have had to hid somewhere and then got back out without me knowing.
Right.
And I didn't go back to sleep for a while.
Understandable.
Yes. So, and the reason I'm not said anything is because I still don't know what I make of this. I'm like, was I seeing things? Was this sleep paralysis? What the hell was this?
No one can say.
Yeah.
I'd like to take a... Are we going to do this again? Do we have any more stories? Do we have any fake stories? Do we... because the reason I say that is because I wanted to talk about Ouija boards for just a second. I know there's a lot of people who you either believe Ouija boards are evil, fun, or total and utter bullshit. My experience has been total and utter bullshit. And that's generally because I have trust issues and I can't trust people. And people are the reason they contribute to this, because there's times, there's somebody and you think you can trust them. Ask yourself this. And this goes for everybody listening. You want to test your trust level with somebody? Ask yourself, would you do a Ouija board with that other person? And know 100% they're not moving the planchette. Okay? Yeah. That's how you find out if you have trust issues or if you trust another person. Because 90% of the time that I did this with other people, I was like, "You're moving it. I know you're moving it. Let's just stop."
That's one of the reasons I don't do the Ouija boards. One, I do think they're bullshit, but why risk it? And two,
right.
Like you said, it's like, it's a 50-50 shot with me. It's like, am I not moving it because I want to see what happens? Or am I moving it because I want to with everybody else? And it's like...
I appreciate your candor and honesty.
It's like, I don't even know what I'm going to do. Because part of me is curious to see what's going to happen.
We've played many board games and card games and word games. And one time a pseudo role-playing game. You're the directors.
Oh, yeah, Fiasco.
Yeah, I can't think of their names. With the brothers...
Coen brothers.
The Coen brothers game, yeah. It's not officially a Coen brothers game, right?
But it plays out like one of their movies.
Right. So, yeah. Okay, so for me, I am like Agent Mulder. I want to believe, and I definitely want the truth, though. No, nothing is above the truth, so I never move it. Is somebody else moving it? I can often tell. There's only a few people in the world I can count. I think, personally... two that I could absolutely trust. I would have put 3, but you just took yourself off the list.
Well,
So-
2.5.
Okay,
2.5.
okay, yeah, so 50% of the time. But which 50 am I getting? I'll never know.
I say the first time would probably be the genuine, and then after
that,
who knows?
the last few times that I've tried anything, I've actually gotten nothing. Not even the I've forgotten the word, but the mechanism in your hands that's supposed to move.
Yeah.
The idiomotor, I think, is the term. I've gotten nothing. The piece moves off the board, and that is what has happened. And it's literally been 100% nothing. When I was younger, it was obviously when I was a very small child, I was into ghosts. I got every ghost book I could from my library, and especially because of the weird things that was happening around me when I was a kid in elementary school. As I got older, I found people who enjoyed discussing ghosts and even any other paranormal experiences. A lot of them were made up, and you could tell because they go too far. As dumb kids, you don't know how to tell a good story to make it believable. You don't just say something like your thing, like, did you guys just see that ghost? He was dressed like a miner. And we live in a mining community. It was like, oh man, this helicopter came down and shined its lights in my bedroom window. How about you shut the up? You're not allowed to talk anymore tonight. So there were very few people. Time and time again, somebody would bring a Ouija board. One time, a friend left their Ouija board at my place. I ended up having it for a really long time. So anytime somebody was like, who's got one? I was like, well, I've got Rob's, I've had it forever now. He eventually got it back, but everyone moves the piece. Everyone moves the planchette, and I can tell. I can tell from the answers. I can tell from how fast they seem to know what it's trying to tell us, and I don't know how that's not obvious to everyone else. I'm not saying that nothing about it is real. Like I said, I'd like to be open-minded. I'd like to think there's something at some point. Then I've had some friends who I felt like, one, I couldn't be 100% sure, but her name was Charlisa, and she seemed to have as much of an interest in finding the truth as I did, and wanted to see if it was real or if it wasn't. Now, the other two guys, I can't be certain about, Mark and Terry, who became a couple later, but we tried a few things, and what little we got out of it, Charlisa was convinced was real. I remained a little more skeptical, and I wasn't there for all of them. Some of them, yes. And it was fun. I will say that was one of the most fun times I've had. And there was one time, for certain, I know what I saw. I don't think it was my fingertips. It was another person's. As we lifted off, we lifted our fingers off of it as we were finishing up. They lifted their fingers up. I was watching it, laser beam focus, and as they lift off of it, it pulled away like half an inch or something. Just like it was done moving, we were done. Everybody lifts up, and it just like that, like it would just a tiny nudge. But it was as they were pulling away. Now I know what I saw. Other people would, any skeptic I know is going to say like, well, they nudged it, they tapped it. That's what happened. Your memory is faulty. You are entitled to your belief. I'm not going to try and convince anybody of anything otherwise. I just wanted to say that as part of it. And it's been a really long time since I've messed about with anything like that because, then why take the chance? Things are hard enough as they are.
Yeah, I'm kind of hesitant to tell people I'm into this kind of stuff because they're like, oh, you're like those crazy people on TV. I'm like, no, I'm not like the crazy people on TV. Again, I want to know what's true. I just like to keep an open mind about all of it. It's like, but I don't take every story as fact. And even my own experiences, I don't take for fact. It's like I try to figure out what's going on. And like Sherlock Holmes it, only when all other possibilities have been taken off the table, whatever's left, even the most improbable, is the solution.
Yeah. And because of my analytical mind, but more so because so many people are skeptical, and because I grew up also with people who wanted to tell stories that were obviously not true. If I told a story, I wanted it to be true. I don't want to tell you. I even leave out the things that I'm like, not that it was so fantastical. I want to have like an apparition story. For 2 years and 2 weeks, I worked at, I forget, it's over 100 years old, the hotel, the Glendon Hotel here in Richmond, Kentucky. That's one of the historic landmarks of Richmond, because I think at this point it is over 100 years old, maybe about 115 years old. And the top floor is eerie. A lot of people have claimed there were people who lived there long term. There would be people who came and went from there and would come back to the area and had stayed there repeatedly that would tell me they'd seen things or experienced things. People who worked in the building or in another part of the building that would have experienced something. I worked third shift the entire time that I worked there, 5 nights a week for 2 years and 2 weeks, and the only thing I saw that scared the out of me were bats flying toward my face. Those are very explainable. I was disappointed. Everybody else got something and I didn't. But does that mean there's nothing there? Not necessarily. I was also busy when I was there. So
yeah, that's how my experience was at the Schoolhouse Inn. Because it's just like, you hear all the stories, you read the stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I'm getting to stay here. But it's also for like a special trip. And so the entire place has been rented out for us kids to stay there. So it's just like, am I hearing this? Or is it someone in the next room being a little too loud? It's like, who knows?
Right, yeah.
And of course, most of us had heard the stories, and so we're all messing with each other. So it's hard to say.
It appears the truth is still out there. And I'll remain vigilant and keep looking for it one way or another. That's the problem with the inverse of, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. We need that. What will it take? I mean, some of these experiences, some of the best experiences. There's a book out there, and I can't remember the name, but the author is, it's more so a compilation of stories. He compiled them. It's Aidan Sinclair. He is a mentalist / magician. He's been on Fool Us, and he has a very dubious backstory. I won't get into it here, but he's well worth looking up. Interesting character. He compiled this. I got to meet him one time at a horror convention, and he was selling a book. Easy enough to find. I do not remember the name, but easy enough to find. The book was this: stories from atheists, scientists, all these people who absolutely don't believe in anything paranormal, supernatural, anything whatsoever. The purest of skeptics. But they all had one story that they could tell from personal experience that they couldn't explain, and fully admitted to it. This was a compilation of those stories. And I love that idea that even these people who, anytime somebody else would tell them that same story even, they would explain it away, but they had that experience. That they could not explain it away and would freely admit to that because, they're bound by their ethics and the truth. They, I have to be honest. Yes, I did have an experience one time. This is it. We'll try to find the title of that book and include it because I think that's very interesting. I like to remain skeptical. I do, because I remain skeptical of everybody else's stories except mine because I know what I experienced. But we can have an emotional biases about that. Having said that, I believe your stories because I know you personally. Having said that, there is that 50% chance.
Yeah, there could be. But in this instance, no, there's not. But I will say, even my stories, take with a grain of salt. Because like you said, our memories are faulty. I'm still not sure what I experienced. This is just me processing and walking myself through it. So yeah, I could be wrong. But to the best of my knowledge and the best of my experiences, this is what happened. And for anyone that is still with us and not totally walked out and discredited everything we've said yet, I will leave you with a little Christmas gift. It's a little joke. It's not my joke. Don't know whose it is. I'm gonna tell it anyway. What do you call a group of former chess champions talking about their former victories in a hotel lobby?
What?
Chestnuts boasting in an open foyer.
That's pretty good.
I'll see myself out. But if you've made it with us this far, thank you. Maybe we'll do something like this again. We've got one more episode that we're going to do this year before we take a little break for the holidays. So again, any questions you want us to answer, any topics you want us to cover, let us know. We've still got a couple weeks before we're going to do that, but follow us on our social media. You can leave your questions there. And until next time, happy holidays and see you.